I'm not crying. You crying? I'm not crying. I'm not crying. I'm not crying. God damn it, who's cutting these onions? People, so My Hero Academia chapter 337. Definitely a lot to digest, a lot to discuss. We got a pretty freaking huge reveal that's been 300 plus chapters in the making yet again. It's like back-to-back reveals. We just got the reveal of the traitor. This week we got yet again another reveal. We also got a little more into the mind of the sick and creepy mental that is All For One. We got some very emotional scenes. We got Aoyama facing up for what he has done, Deku facing this whole thing, and there's something to be said about Deku and how he handles the situation at the end as well, and a lot of what Deku takes on as everything becomes personal to him. So definitely we got to talk about some of this stuff because yo, it got emotionally very, very heavy, especially if you're invested in the relationships between a lot of these members of Class 1A. You might have felt it, mate. Let's talk about it.
No matter how you feel, get it done. No matter how you feel, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done.
Okay, people, so hands down, I gotta say that this chapter, even though it was going over some threads that we've kind of already went through time and time again in terms of like, you can be a hero, and Deku feeling emotional about certain aspects of things, and Deku crying in general, I don't know, there was something about this chapter, maybe it was more of a personal thing, I can't really grasp it, maybe it's just that this is something integral to this, you know, big Class 1A, and even though for the longest time I wasn't the biggest fan of, hey, 1A goes through everything together, after some point I've kind of just gotten to like, I accept it, you know, 1A goes through a lot of stuff together, and ultimately we see in this one, Aoyama facing up to the crimes, and it got me really sad, I ain't gonna lie, towards the end of it, I don't know why, because I was just, again, like, I've been down this alley with this series, but maybe the way it was done, the way it was handled, the fact that Deku, despite everything, and despite the fact that he could have taken Aoyama's head off right then and there, he was almost frozen with guilt and sorrow to the point that Invisible Girl needed to save him. But we'll get to that in a second because the chapter opens up with All For One yapping his gums away, and it's interesting because it kind of is taking place from where the last chapter, I want to say it was either the beginning or the ending of the chapter before that, where All For One was basically telling Dabi, that conversation they were having, that I've got some friends, mate, even though now that looking back at it, it was probably Horikoshi using that dialogue in particular to kind of wind things up and throw everyone off the trail of, hey, what's going on with the whole big reveal, because first we got that misleading reveal that, oh, it gotta be Invisible Girl because All For One's talking about he got friends, and we see Invisible Girl hiding, so it has to be her being the traitor, and then after the fact, like, it was like, oh no, it wasn't, and there's not really a friendship thing per se with Aoyama's relationship between him and All For One, so it looks like in retrospect, All For One, that dialogue in particular was like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's explained that, like, you know, he's a piece of shit or whatever, but it feels like that was more so to throw us off of the trail of what Horikoshi was really on about. Because Dabi is questioning like, yo, so these quote-unquote friends you have, doesn't that put us in a precarious situation if they get caught? Isn't it going to be like, hey, we're exposed? And he's like, I kind of misspoke. It's not friendship by any means. I'm using them motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm using them for my personal needs, and if they give me a little bit of entertainment along the way, it'll be alright. But other than that, nah, fam, they just tools, you know what I'm saying? They're a wrench, they're a screwdriver, they're a hammer, and I got the blicky on me. No. Oh god, what I would give to hear All For One say that. Like, imagine in Japanese, ah, so desu ne, buriki. And Aoyama's parents, which at the end of the day, I feel sympathetic towards them. I feel empathy towards them. I can't be completely against them. Like, absolutely, they should be punished. Absolutely, there was a certain point where they should have just stopped already. Absolutely, they were selfish and not, you know, fessing up and doing everything that they did ultimately, but I look at it from a different standpoint. Me being a parent and understanding sometimes a parent will do illogical things because you love your child. So they saw their child is going to be an outcast. They saw their child was going to have a difficult life despite the fact of what they came up from, which is even more admirable. That, yo, we come from like money and stuff like that, you know. In a different story, they would have just abandoned Aoyama. They would have freaking flushed the kid down the toilet or sent them down a freaking river stream with the penguin from Batman and called it a day. The fact that they were like, no, we love our kid And even if there's just a little rumor around the way that old man's got a little bit of pull to give us a quirk for our son, we're gonna go that route. I understand them. I sympathize with them. I get it. And when they're there trying to push Aoyama, like, run out, no son, like, let's go, I'm like, yeah, they kind of look at this point pitiful, but ultimately I feel bad for them. Like, they're just parents that really love their son, and I can't be mad at that. I mean, don't get me wrong, they put a lot of people in jeopardy and a lot of people in harm's way, and ultimately could have destroyed civilization and as a whole, thanks to, you know, helping out All for One, stop the only people that could stop him. But I get it. It's a rational parenting that you love your kid so much you're doing stupid shit. And we find out that when Aoyama first got his quirk, he suffered a bit, which I'm wondering if there was any setup for that, because it just kind of felt like that could either be a throwaway thing of just giving an idea of Aoyama being sick when he first got the quirk, or there could be more to it. Because again, don't forget that what happened with Lady Nagant, ultimately he blew her up when she didn't do things, right? All for One. And they were saying, you know, after everybody was roped up, and we'll get to that in a bit, that, hey, it doesn't seem like he's similar to Nagant, but it could be that there's something else. Maybe he used Aoyama as damn near a human camera, so to speak, because he's more beneficial in a different method of like, yeah, stay around them. I could hear, or I could do something, or I could have other spies, like something along those lines. Why he wouldn't put a bomb, and why that thing was set up to begin with of, hey, he was sick when he first got the quirk. Although I guess it was also showing a comparison to, wasn't like Deku really going through it when he first got, you know, One for All or whatnot. And then we just got a little bit more of kind of what we already, you know, could infer, and ultimately what was shown again a little bit last week of how the hell did All for One know this? How did the League of Villains know this? Whether it be the campgrounds, whether it be from the very beginning, I want to say, in that first training session in the other school building, when the villains showed up, when it was Deku returning and, you know, getting him isolated or whatnot, it was Aoyama. And at the end of the day, he was on the opposite side of things while his parents were trying to protect him and give him a normal life, and kind of were bamboozled into this whole situation with All for One. Following that, then it was him protecting his parents of, yo, it's either my parents or y'all, and I'm gonna keep it real, I really love my parents, so... Which again, I sympathize with that as well. Like Aoyama, obviously it's kids and they get dramatic, and of course they're gonna feel guilt at the end of the day because they still participated in something that affected negatively a lot of people that they care about. But ultimately, he's not a villain. The parents aren't villains. They just made mistakes trying to save and protect the people they care about. Like, really, that's it. And yeah, you know, I never really thought about it, but when Aoyama read the letter of Deku saying how he was quirkless, how much that must have affected him as well. If like they were both quirkless, it's like, wow, so, you know, I'm having him targeted, and I'm lying and deceiving and smiling in his face while I'm doing it all, and he's been through the same stuff as me. It kind of puts you in the shoes even more to empathize. Like, he's probably there like, that very well could have been me. They two sides of the same coin, almost the same way I used to say about Deku and Shigaraki. It was like, essentially, Deku was rescued by All Might, and Aoyama fell into the clutches of All for One. I guess you could also say different parenting, right? Like, Deku's mom was like, I'm sorry, son, I'm sorry, you fucking suck. While they're like, you're not gonna suck by any means. And it was just fate intercepted with Deku, and his parents intercepted with him. Almost kind of a very sad lesson in a way, that sometimes as parents you gotta just step back and let, you know, nature and stuff happen. Like, if you step in, you can make things a lot worse. Maybe Aoyama could have just been a hero in a different method, whether it be somebody would have ran into him, or he could have been a Batman-esque villain, or he would have found a different passion in general, and maybe he would have been a little bit bullied, but he would have been stronger from it along the way. And I ain't gonna lie, I had to reread the chapter, because at first I thought, like, what the hell just happened? Like, Aoyama actually was going the distance there, which again shows how much he loves his parents, that he actually lets off a naval blast on Deku. Like, we have those two panels where Deku's going into One for All, and he's going into his naval blast, and he actually lets it off. And I was there like, oh wow, like, that right there, you could argue, is Aoyama once again, like, taking it even another step further. And the fact that, you know, Hagakure jumped in front of it was essentially very impactful, because obviously Deku, if he was really trying, he could have taken off his head, right? Deku could have One for All, slam him down. Aoyama's not the strongest guy in the book. His naval blast is I guess, or whatever, but ultimately, like, he's not the strongest dude. In fact, I think Deku right there would have actually allowed Aoyama to hurt him, because even though he was gearing up or whatever, I don't think he was going to do shit to him at that point. I think he was going to take that blast. You even see in one of the panels, he's like holding his arms up as if he was like going to just take the hit, and thanks to Invisible Girl and her capabilities of being able to essentially refract the light, ultimately nothing really happened there. But yeah, when he ties them all up and says, you should thank Hagakure because she allowed you to stop from doing any more mistakes and hurting anybody else, because he would have essentially hurt Deku, I guess, in a way, because Deku was just going to take it because he's there in agony. And I wasn't realizing it until towards the end of the chapter that when he's hearing all of this, Deku is once again blaming himself. And I hope Deku gets to a point where he's not doing that, because it is something that it looks to me like it absolutely destroys Deku every time he goes through this. Every time something like this happens where he blames himself, it is not only heart-wrenching to watch, it feels self-destructive, and it feels like this is an obstacle of a character trait that Deku needs to overcome. Like, he blames himself constantly. If, I don't freaking know, Todoroki stubs his toe, and he was talking to Todoroki at the time, be like, oh my god, it was my fault. If I wouldn't have talked to you, just stop. Like, shit happens, and it's not your fault. How the hell 10 years ago when freaking Aoyama's parents were tapped to go do this damn thing for, like, it's not your fault. You gotta stop blaming yourself.
Nah, ain't no my fault. Run your pockets, yo.
So I'm really hoping we reach a point, whether it be a time skip down the road or just in general towards the end of the series, we see Deku accepting that, yo, it's not always going to be your fault. You gotta stop blaming yourself about everything. And following refracting the light from the naval blast, we actually see a huge reveal, 300 chapters in the making, Invisible Girl's face for the first time, and it looks like she is crying. And I'm still going to hang on very loosely, but nevertheless, I'm gonna hang on to the thought of what if that whole speech that we was getting of All For One saying how he has multiple tools and multiple routes to get what he wants, if one way doesn't work, the other one will. Who knows? Maybe still Invisible Girl could still technically be a traitor, spy, something along the lines of that, and it's just that, hey, this guy was about to crack, let me get him out the way, and then really all suspicion is going to be completely off of me, because yeah, maybe she's actually still not on the up and up. Again, that's totally, at the end of the day, just speculation, because right now it just seemed like an emotional moment. Eventually she goes on to scold Aoyama like, yo, you was there laughing it up with us, and all this time you putting us in danger, you could have us killed. And yeah, that could very well be valid and just straight up honest. At the end of the day, Class 1 has this bond with each other. Could be covering yourself, I'm just saying. But just, wow, it's crazy. Landmark. It wasn't the most major moment in the world, but the way it was subtly done, I appreciated it. It wasn't having to be like, oh, end of chapter, oh my god, look at Invisible Girl's face. It was something like, hey, I was protecting a friend, and ultimately I got revealed throughout, the story or whatnot. And I mean, she looks like, okay, she doesn't look anything like, imagine it would have been crazy if it was like an old man or something. That would have been fire. I'm just saying, like, some radical, wild, freaking reveal of, like, Invisible Girl's like a 90-year-old man. I'm just saying. I know probably people were thinking, like, yo, Fornev, you're a little bugging on that one. You want Invisible Girl to be a 90-year-old man? I don't know. Maybe I just think that'd be funny. Like, imagine it's Mermaid Man or Barnacle Boy. We gotta stop this evil! Okay, I'm having too much fun. Let me relax now. And following that, Deku, which again, I was kind of confused. I thought for a second that was Aizawa that came through, but just shows that Deku has really enveloped a lot of the traits of the people that, you looked up to in the beginning of the series, because he uses the Black Whip quirk and wraps up Aoyama and his parents, and like I said earlier, tells him basically, like, you should thank Hagakure for jumping in before you hurt somebody else, because again, he was gonna it could have also been like some wacky, wild, backhanded threat of like, before you hurt somebody else, because I was gonna knock your teeth through your mouth, motherfucker. Don't play with me, bro. Like, I was trained by All Might. You know what I'm saying? I could, yeah, one for all in your ass, boy. But when he said, so come on and let this be over, and he was there teary-eyed and stuff, I don't know, I did get a little bit emotional. I'm not the biggest Aoyama fan. I'm not the most gung-ho about, like, Class 1A, I love our camaraderie, but it got me. However, we cut to the adults, All Might, and some of the other staff from UA, and they're all informed now of what was happening, Aoyama, his parents, etc., and they're deducing that All For One did not rig him with explosives like Nagant, because, hey, he's still intact, and it's been 10 years, but again, it could be that he didn't put explosives in him, he did something else. Maybe it'll be a mechanism where he'll completely take over Aoyama's body down the road or some crazy shit, like be able to press a button and he turns into a damn Nomu. And that's also not taking away from the fact that probably his parents could have something on them as well that they could blow up or some shit like that. Like, All For One is just too prepared for all of this. Like, you telling me he's not gonna have some extra preparations in case the little kid that is lying to his best friends can't come through with everything that I need? Like, yeah, I'm gonna blow his parents to smithereens, or I'm gonna do something to make him him do what I want regardless, because he's a little stupid kid in my eyes. I'm all for one. Also, I ain't gonna lie, I got a kick out of the principal trying to throw the kids out. Like, would you guys mind leaving? And they're like, listen, you little mouse motherfucker, we'll break you in half. You crazy talking to us like that. We ain't going nowhere. That is my interpretation of it. I know it was a little bit different, but work with me, people. No, when the mouse principal is like, yo, can y'all leave for a second? And they're like, nah, because they're so kind of distraught about it all. You know, 1A, they're like, yo, Aoyama, say it ain't so. And even seeing Bakugo's reaction, it was very different. It wasn't loud. And this is Bakugo, like, you know, he kind of almost clams up when he gets emotional like this, because, you know, he'll deny it all day and night, but he's already a part of this camaraderie of a family of 1A. So he's there like, yo, you know, somebody that was also quirkless with a small world. It also makes him probably feel guilty. Like another person, I was talking all this shit about people being quirkless and bullying people and stuff like that. There was another person here that I was offending, and, you know, it just probably makes him look back at like, damn, I really was a shithead. And again, kind of trying to reaffirm that, who knows, maybe there is no way for All For One to get to them at this time, that ultimately the parents has seen firsthand what All For One can do. If you double cross him, how there was a prisoner that as soon as he got out of prison, essentially he was murdered. Yeah, it could be that he doesn't have an explosive from far away, but the second that they appear, like, I'm pretty sure Aoyama or his parents, one or the other, are going to get either severely hurt or they're going to get killed. Probably the parents, I'd say, by All For One. I mean, they definitely, hands down, no questions asked, need to be severely punished, especially the parents, regardless of what. And even though I sympathize and I empathize with them or whatever, yeah, because at the end of the day, they were being selfish after the fact. Like, it started off as a selfless act, you know, doing what we can for our kid. It turned into a selfish thing of, like, we don't want to die, so, like, just listen to the mush face guy, okay? And we see a little more, again, of Aoyama's guilt of, while he succumbed to everything that All For One threw at him and essentially became a vessel for his bidding, Deku was going through a similar situation and never folded. You know, he ain't bend, he ain't fold, he ain't break. Ultimately, Deku, again, opposite side of the same coin, as I said earlier. It's just different circumstances, and that's something that Aoyama needs to recognize. Like, you were dealt a different hand. If your parents would have said, nah, man, you know, it'll be alright, and not, hey, we're gonna go find and fetch you a quirk, it would have been different. But this is, again, in classic Deku fashion that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I do think he needs to get over this, as he's trying to comfort Aoyama and say, you're not a straight up villain, you're not a piece of crap, look, you saved Bakugo and Tokoyami, and you left me the cheese letter, you know, saying, giving me a hint, and I wish I would have saw it earlier. And this was what really kind of got me like, oh, come on, Deku. I don't want to say it pissed me off, but maybe a little bit of him saying, I wish I would have knew that was your SOS signal. I didn't see it. And again, he starts taking all the blame on himself, just like he did an arc ago when they were trying to bring him to the school, and he was saying, no, all of this is my fault. I got to do it, taking all of the weight on his shoulders. I'm sure All Might used to have to deal with situations like that, but at the end of the day, All Might was more rational about it. He understood, like, it's not all my fault, but I can do what I can do to make sure I remedy the situation. But Deku, that's definitely something that I hope that changes down the road. You can accept it, you can understand that, who knows, maybe you might have had a part in all of it, but at the end of the day, to take all of the burden on your shoulders and blame yourself for everything, that's self-destructive behavior, and it's going to damage him down the road. And the chapter ends off with, it kind of felt a little, you know, typical friendship, whatnot. Deku saying, you know, hold out your hand to me, you can be a hero too. I was like, okay, that was a little cheesy there, mate, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little bit emotional when I read it. I don't know what it was. Maybe I was just having an emotional day or something. But yeah, I got emotional with the end of that chapter too. And again, I'm not the biggest buff of Class 1A. I'm not like, oh, Aoyama, poor Aoyama. But I think Horikoshi just did it right. And ultimately, my say on this whole chapter is I still think there's a lot of room for Deku to grow. It actually was upsetting to me that he was taking all of this as if it's his fault. Like, you're not Aoyama's parents. You're not Aoyama himself. Just because you didn't notice a sign of something was off, that you can't take the blame. But also, there are circumstances in the world where, you know, let's just say somebody does something to themselves, and there's people that blame themselves. I should have seen the signs or whatever. So I get that aspect of it. But as far as being a hero and taking all of it in and all that jazz, Deku needs to get past that point of his character. But I guess maybe a little bit of that still needs to be a integral part in terms of just understanding that bad shit is going to happen and understanding that you need to protect and save people people, but you can't look back and always be like, it was my fault, I should have done more. Like, nah. But still, very emotional chapter. Very curious what you guys think. What do you think about the big reveal of Invisible Girl's face after 300 plus chapters? Again, kind of a little loco. You think she could still be not necessarily on the up and up? Maybe that's another one of the tools, so to speak, at All for One's disposal. Your thoughts of the chapter as a whole? Aoyama finally being captured and his parents, the traitor, and UA seemingly for now being over with. And your overall thoughts and expectations for the My Hero Academia manga with chapter 338 and onward. Definitely an emotional one. All for One continuing to just show how much of a piece of shit he is. And yeah, Deku, it's not always all your fault. Remember that. That's all I have for this one, though. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Hit that bell to get all notifications. And if you want to follow any of my other social media, links are in the description below. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And remember the golden rule. Anime and manga on life, bye. Have an awesome day. Peace in. And, yeah, wow. Invisible Girl's face revealed. The traitor fully apprehended in UA 1A. And Deku cried. But, yeah, he got to man up a little bit more. Just get past that, taking all the blame. Have an awesome one.